5 o'clock today? Well, we finished up the Gospel of John last Sunday, and we want to start a different study today. You know, we are looking at times going on in the world that are strange and unusual, and we're not having so much of earth disasters, but human and disease disasters. And so many lives that are being taken by this horrible sickness. And it is in the news, and it's on the front page all the time. Your emails, if you get emails, are constantly referring to the COVID-19 situation. And so, as I was praying about what to do next, it seemed like the Lord was leading me in the direction to speak a few Sundays on the subject of when disaster comes. When disaster comes. And so we're going to be looking today at the book of Job, chapter number 1. So bow with me in prayer, please. Lord, I stand before you now as a servant that you have called and given a responsibility to. You have not called me because I'm worthy or deserving or because I'm so good. It was your decision to call me, and you gave me the ability to respond positively and accept that calling. And I pray this morning that you'd help me to be faithful to your word. And I pray that you would use it to minister to everyone who hears. That you draw people even on the Facebook public page and also YouTube to hear this message today and through sermon audio, and that it would minister to the needs of hearts, that through it believers would be strengthened and the lost would come to know Christ. Help me now to have clarity of thought. Help me to present what you have given to me. I thank you for the privilege, and I ask your blessing on it. I commit it now to you in Jesus' name. Amen. The book of Job. As we think about the book of Job is considered to be the oldest book in the Bible. Interesting that the oldest book in the Bible would be a book about hard times in life and how to have victory in those hard times. Job knew nothing about Satan's challenge to God and had no idea that Satan was using him as a tool for slandering the Lord. Now, I want you to think about this in present-day situation. Job had no idea what was going on behind the scenes spiritually. And he had no idea that Satan was hoping to use him to slander God. Job also did not know that God would use his sufferings, Job's sufferings, to defeat Satan. That God would use Job's suffering to defeat Satan. God's people are soldiers on the battlefield. The Bible tells us that we are in a spiritual warfare, that we are soldiers of the cross, and that we are on the spiritual battlefield. But there are times when Christians are the battlefield. That warfare that's going on inside of them between the old flesh and the new man. The things that are happening in their lives daily and the things they know the Bible teaches about those things. Apart from the book of Job, this book where Job is mentioned frequently, apart from that, Job is mentioned only 2 other times in the Bible. One is in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 14, verse 14 through 20, where a reference is made to Job's righteousness. And also in the book of James, chapter 5, verse 11, where reference is made to Job's patience. We don't like that word, but it's one of those things that as believers we have to have. And the Bible tells us that God's going to bring things into our life to help us learn patience. The best thing we can do is learn from it and ask God to help us to be more trusting in Him so that we don't have to continually go through the learning process. This book has lots of chapters in it. And it talks about the trials that go into Job's life and how he handles those. But when we come to the end of that book, we find that he displays his righteousness and his patience. Well, I'm not going to read through the entire chapter. It's a familiar book. I'm going to take it as we have it in the outline. The first point being when Job was with God, where Job was with God, his family, and society. Where is Job in a relationship with God? That's important. If you're not in a relationship with God, you need to be. And the other way you can be in a relationship with God is to confess to Him that you're a sinner, that you deserve to go to hell, taking responsibility for your sinfulness and asking God to forgive you of your sin and put your faith and trust in the finished work of Jesus Christ on the cross. The Bible tells us that Jesus died on the cross and paid the price for man's sin so that man could be saved, his sin debt washed away by the blood. And if we don't accept Jesus, if we don't turn from our wicked ways, if we don't repent of our sin, repenting of my sin means I've changed my mind about it. I like it, I repent of it, I don't like it any longer. Therefore, as I used to commit it, I no longer commit it. That's repentance. It's a change of mind and a change of action. And unless we're willing to do that and trust Jesus as Savior and ask Him to come into our life and change us and make us a new creature in Christ, then there's no hope. And all the stuff you go through in life, whether it be good or bad, when you come to the end, will have no value. It'll just be eternal damnation in the lake of fire. It's not necessary. Jesus has paid the price. God has provided the way for you to go to heaven. But unless you accept Jesus as Savior, you will end up paying for eternity the price of your unsaved life. So we're looking at where Job was with God, with his family, and with society. Verse number 1. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright, and one that feared God and eschewed evil. Let's look at our notes. Verse 1. We see, first of all, God's description of Job. How do we know it's God's description? First of all, because the Bible's inspired. Whomever God chose to write the book of Job was inspired by God to do so. But also, God Himself says those very words to Satan in verse number 8. So we see God's description of Job. First of all, he's called perfect. Point 1. That means beyond reproach, but not sinless or flawless. In other words, he wasn't a perfect man, never doing any wrong, but he lived a life that was above reproach. He tried to be careful to live a good life in front of those that he was with. Secondly, he was upright. He was upright. We see in the book of Exodus chapter 15 and Deuteronomy chapter 12, it talks about this word upright, meaning one who is upstanding, one who has the respect of people. So he was perfect, he was upright, and he feared God. Meaning he had a reverential fear and respect for God. He wasn't afraid of God, like, oh my, I'm so afraid. No. It was, I respect God for who he is. Therefore, I will demonstrate my respect through the way I live and the way I talk. He had a reverential respect for God. It was the fear of God that kept Job from evil. Proverbs 8:13 tells us that. Then he was one who eschewed or shunned. The word eschewed means shunned. He shunned evil, or to depart, or put a space between oneself and sin. He deliberately lived his life so as to not allow sin, as it was known or could be practiced by the world, to infiltrate his life. He guarded against that. He lived the kind of life that was exemplary as a believer. Perfect? No. Sinless? No. But a changed man. One who had his faith and trust in God. So we see his description with God. Then we see verse 2 and 3, Job's status in the world. Verse 2, there were born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. He definitely had his quiver full, 10 children. His substance also was 7,000 sheep, and 3,000 camels, and 4,000 yoke of oxen, and 500 she-asses, and a very great household, so that this man was the greatest of all the men of the East. So Job's status in the world, first of all, he was married, and he was a father of these children. Secondly, he was a success as a businessman. He was successful as a businessman. And we have this listing of the things here. The sheep, the camels, the oxen, the donkeys, and a large enough staff to take care of everything. That would take a lot of property and manpower. Maybe if you need something to do this afternoon with all your downtime, just kind of figure how much land it would take just to have 7,000 sheep. And then add to it the camels, the oxen, and the donkeys. And then what kind of staff would it take? It's amazing. It's amazing. Another amazing fact here, that you don't think about, is how God had expanded the animal race from just 2 of each coming off the ark. And now just one man has this many animals, and say nothing of all the rest of these same animals throughout the rest of the world. God does things well. So we see his status in the world. In verse 4 and 5, we see Job's status with God. Verse 4 and 5. And his sons went and feasted in their houses, every one his day, and sent and called for their 3 sisters to eat and to drink with them. And it was so, when the days of their feasting was gone about, that Job sent and sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning, and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, it might be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continually. His spiritual status with God. First of all, he took his role as a spiritual leader in the family seriously. Let me say to you dads just for a moment. Next Sunday is Mother's Day. But in June is Father's Day. But let me say this to you dads now. You need to take the spiritual role in your household, your family, as a spiritual leader of the family. Whether your children are still at home or grown and out and about. They need to be able to look at their dad, whether they're at home or on their own, raising their own families or having their own careers. They need to be looking at their dad and saying, my dad is following the Lord. He's not perfect, but he does have a heart for God. And he's trying to do the right thing. And he's trying to set a good example for the family. And if there's someone I need to talk to about spiritual matters, I can always go to my dad. And Dad, if you're not like that today, then you need to get on your knees before the Lord and ask Him to forgive you of your unfaithfulness and change your position with Him. He will do that if you have a heart that desires to see Him change your life. It's never too late to become the spiritual leader. Now remember, leader is one in this capacity who leads by example, not by dictatorship. So to be a spiritual leader in our family, we have to lead by our example, by what we say, how we live. But Job was one who took his role as a spiritual leader of his family seriously. Secondly, he was discerning concerning the spiritual needs of his children. As fathers who walk with the Lord and know our own weaknesses and our own sinfulness, we have to also be honest about our children, because our children have part of us in them. And they are prone to sin. We don't excuse it. If they're in our home, we deal with it when they do. But nonetheless, it does happen. And we make allowances for that. But nonetheless, we, understanding the needs spiritually in the warfare in our own children's life based on our own warfare, we come to the next point. We find that Job made it a point to intercede for his family before God. And the idea here is he did it continually. He didn't just pray for his family once in a while. He was always in the mindset and attitude of prayer and offering sacrifices to God in behalf of his children. His children's spiritual condition was a high priority on Job's mind, and Job talked to God often about the spiritual condition of his family. Well, that's where Job was with God, with society, and with his family. Secondly, we see in verse 6 through 12, the warfare that is not seen by human eyes. This COVID-19, there's a spiritual warfare going on there. We may not see it, but it is going on. And you and I need to try to understand it from that angle. It's not just a health warfare. There's a spiritual element to this that is very much a part of what's going on in our world and in our lives. We've been idle, shall I say? I know I haven't been idle, and you probably haven't either. But our lives have been changed for going on 2 months now. And we're probably getting antsy, probably wanting change. Probably want to get back to church, and I want to see you get back to church. I don't want to just look at pictures in pews. I want to see your faces. But we need to ask the Lord for wisdom in what we do, so that we don't make foolish decisions based on our emotion and not on the leading and directing of God. We are in a spiritual warfare, and that warfare is one that we don't see. Look at verse number 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. So we see there was a report by the angels, and we see that one of these is Satan. Now Satan is still an angel. He's a fallen angel. He is one that now has the curse of God on him. The Bible tells us in Hebrews that angels are ministering spirits that are sent forth to minister to believers. Satan is a fallen angel who's taken it upon himself to have a ministry to destroy believers and destroy people because he hates God. His warfare is against God. But we see something very significant here. as these angels come to present themselves before the Lord, Satan also has to come and give a report to God, because God is his superior. Don't forget that. God is still on the throne, no matter how loud Satan gets, no matter how confused and what confusion he brings into the world. God is still on the throne, and God is still in control, and Satan can only do what God allows him to do. You say, well, I don't understand why God. Don't worry about that. You're getting into the realm that belongs only to God. And we will get way off base when we start trying to humanly, with our fallible minds, to figure God out, who is infallible. But nonetheless, there's some truth here. That Satan also, point B, comes before the throne of God. The word Satan means adversary. So as the angels come to present themselves before the Lord, the adversary also comes among them. So we see, point B, one, he's accountable to God, and two, he has to give a report of his behavior to God. Now, I'm sure as he comes before the Lord, and he gives this glowing, what he sees as a glowing report of his rebellion against God and his overthrowing God, he probably walks up in his pride and arrogance and just brags about what he's doing. And you think, well, if it was me, I'd get tired of that and I'd just get rid of it. No, God is sovereign. He's not threatened by Satan. He is not threatened by the devil or what the devil's doing. And so we see that in verse number 8. Verse 7, and the Lord said to Satan, whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. Kind of like a general answer. I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing, God. Not knowing that God knows what he's doing. He's blinded. Satan's sin has blinded him. Things he ought to know about God, he has allowed his sinfulness to blind him to it. Verse 8, and the Lord said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and sheweth evil? So we see, point C, that God brings up the subject of Job to Satan. Now, by doing that, God did not throw Job to the wolf. Some would say, well, why would God even do that? God has a plan, and he's going to use Job as part of his plan. And ultimately, Job will come out better for it and more victorious. But we see here, God did not throw him to the wolves. God had a plan that neither Job nor Satan understood. Satan doesn't know everything. He has multiple years of experience, thousands of years of experience with humanity. But he doesn't know everything. But he's not dumb. He's learned a lot. But he is not all-knowing. And he does not know what God is doing here to basically embarrass him in the end, to defeat him in the life of Job, and to cause him to see that he still is God. But neither Job nor Satan know what God is up to. And 3, God told Satan what a righteous man Job was. God emphasized the righteousness of Job. And oh, how Satan hates righteousness, because he who once was righteous turned from it. Turned to his own sinfulness and his own depravity. I don't either. But I just know what the Bible teaches about it. So we see that God brought up the subject of Job. Remember, this is a warfare that's unseen by human eyes. In verse 9 through verse 11, then Satan answered the Lord and said, doth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou made a hedge about him and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side. Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. So we see, secondly, that Satan makes unfounded accusations, which he has always done. You and I can't see it, but I believe the Bible, from this, helps us to understand that often Satan will make accusations to God about you, about me. And then God will say, that's unfounded. That's not true. That's not what they'll do. And then we are entered into a warfare, a spiritual warfare. How will we fare? We don't know that's how it is, but we see that it happened with Job. Some will say, well, but Job was a unique person. He was probably the strongest spiritual man on the earth at the time. That may be true. I don't know. But Satan hates believers. And the New Testament teaches that we are accused by the adversary before God. So you and I must understand those things and put it into our own memory bank, especially with what we're going through right now. And all the thoughts and maybe fears or doubts or reactions that we're having to what's going on in the world and in our own personal lives. But we see Satan's understanding was that Job only served because of what God was doing for him. That's in verse 9 through 10. Well, Job serves you because you're so good to him. You blessed him above everybody else. But in verse 11, Satan continued talking, says, put forth thine hand now, and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face. We see that due to his own reasoning, that Satan believes that Job would abandon God if the blessing of God was removed. How about you and me? Would we abandon God if things in life didn't go the way we thought they would? Have you become cold and indifferent toward the Lord because life's been hard for you? Things have gone on in your family that you never thought would happen. You didn't plan for it to go the way they have, and so you kind of looked at, well, God, I've tried to serve you. I've tried to be faithful, and this is how you treat me? That's what Satan is saying about Job. You quit being so nice to Job. You put your hand on him and you challenge what he's got in life, or even take it away, and he'll curse you to your face. Have we done that? Oh, well, we wouldn't use four-letter words, but maybe our thoughts and our actions, maybe our anger toward God because of the way things are going, or the way things have turned out, or the situations as we find them in our life. So we become frustrated at God. You see, Satan didn't understand that one of God's created beings could serve God out of love and not as a means of self-reward. And secondly, Satan made a horrific accusation against Job. That's terrible. But this is how Satan thinks, because this is who Satan is. This is the way he is. Therefore, he makes accusations about people based on who he is and what he does. And then we see in verse 12, knowing the heart of Job, God chose to prove Satan wrong. Why? Why would he expose Job to what's about to come? Because God knows Job's heart. God knows that Job is serving because of his love for God, his desire to fear God and please God, and to be upright before God. God knows that in Job's life, it's all about God. Oh, God's been good to me. But if God takes it away, it's still all about God. So we find, knowing his heart, he says this, and the Lord said to Satan, Behold, all that he hath is in thine power. Only upon himself put not forth thine hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. Satan goes, oh man, I can't believe God would be so stupid as to let me be able to deal with Job's possessions. I'll prove God wrong. So he thinks in his own delight as he walks away, he has the victory, and God is stupid. Listen, God's not stupid. Never has been, never will be. God knows what he's doing, and God is fully in control. The third point is the disaster in Job's life. Verse 13 through verse 19. Now, in all of these events, Satan performed his vicious act or acts upon Job by making it look like other people or God was behind it all. He never has it happen in such a way that Job looks like, you know what's going on here? Satan is attacking me. No, he looks and he says, that's a people attack. That's a God attack. At least that's the appearance, the outward appearance. Let's look at it. Verse 14. And there came a messenger unto Job. Verse 13, And there was a day when his sons and his daughters were eating and drinking wine in their elder brother's house. And there came a messenger unto Job and said, The oxen were plowing, and the asses feeding beside them, and the Sabeans fell upon them, and took them away. Yea, they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. So the first one is the stealing of his part of the livestock and killing a part of his staff by thieves. Now remember, Satan's behind this. Then verse number 16. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, The fire of God is fallen from heaven, and hath burned up the sheep and the servants, and consumed them, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. So we see, point B, the fire of God came from heaven and destroyed more of his livestock and killed more of his staff. Verse 17. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, The Chaldeans made out 3 bands and fell upon the camels, and have carried them away, yea, and have slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. So now the rest of his livestock has been stolen, and the rest of his support staff is killed by other thieves. While he was yet speaking, verse 18, there came also another and said, Thy sons and thy daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. Now, let's stop there for a moment. Back to back, Job has received 3 reports from surviving servants that come and say, You won't believe the devastation that's taken place. Well, Job can handle that thus far because it's possessions that can be replaced. Unfortunately, the servants have lost their lives. But now the news that Job never wanted to hear comes. And that is, while he was yet speaking, there also came another and said, Thy sons and thy daughters. Can you imagine the dread and the fear that must have suddenly come over Job's heart? When one of our family members becomes ill, or we hear of a tragedy that takes place in our family, it just does something horrendous to us as parents. When our children hurt, we hurt. And now Job is hearing something that he hoped he would never hear. They were having this gathering in the home. They were eating and drinking wine in the eldest brother's house, and behold, there came a great wind from the wilderness, and smote the four corners of the house, and it fell upon the young men, and they are dead. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. And we see, point D, a great wind came and destroyed the house where Job's children were eating and gathering. Now, I've heard some people say, well, Job's kids were just a bunch of wild renegades and always having drunken parties. I don't believe that. I'm sorry. I believe what we have here is, one, this was a gathering, a family gathering, merely a family gathering for fellowship and enjoyment. In this day, this time, we don't know what the population of the earth was, but one thing we see is that Job's family was a tight-knit family. They loved to get together for fellowship. I'm looking forward to the day, hopefully soon, when our family can gather together, probably at our house. That's where most of the family gatherings happen, and that's great. Where we can gather together as a family unit for fellowship. We've Zoomed, we've had meetings that way, we've seen our children individually, but it's just something special when the family can get together for fellowship. And I believe that's what was happening here. They met a lot. While they're having that family meeting, a natural disaster seemed like God's judgment because Satan was behind the whole event. We've seen a lot of natural disasters recently in our own area and in the southeast from the tornadoes that have come through because of the storms. We've got to be careful that we don't blame God for that. We still live in a sin-cursed world. And things happen in our world that God never intended to happen. But because Adam and Eve sinned against God, it set in motion a whole realm of events. COVID-19 was not God's plan. It's God doing something. I believe God is trying to give us a wake-up call of what he's capable of doing. But that's not God's best for us. God wanted us to be able to enjoy a wonderful, blessed life, free from sin. One day we will. But we find here that these tragedies take place. Notice, you see a phrase that says, I only am escaped alone to tell thee. Interesting how Satan allowed one servant out of that whole disaster to escape so that he could run and tell Job. Let me stop there just for a minute. What kind of person are you? There are people in our world, unfortunately, who just thrive on telling bad stuff about other people. Seems how they get their joy. I'm not saying these servants, like, if I'd been one of the servants, I'd want to go tell Job. Absolutely. But then there are also people who seem to get joy and happiness from sharing good things and good news. And if and when they do have to share something that is not good, you can sense the grief and the brokenness in their own voice and heart. They're not sharing it simply because they're just getting their fun out of it. They're doing it because it's a necessary report that has to be given. God help us and deliver us from those people who love to gossip and tell of bad things about other people. But Satan just happened to have these servants that escaped to run back and tell Job, one right behind the other. Bang, bang, bang. These difficulties, these tragedies take place all at once, overwhelming. For one moment, Job's the richest and the most blessed man in the world, and now he's lost everything. And the only thing that's left is Job and his wife. The 10 children are gone. His possessions are gone. His servants are gone. Man, how are you going to react to that? But we see forth Job's testimony to Satan, to God, and to those who knew what was transpiring. Verse number 20. Then Job rose and rent his mantle, tore off his outer garment, which was a sign of grief, shaved his head, again a sign of grief, and fell upon the ground and worshipped. So we see, first of all, in his testimony, a natural reaction, remorse and grief in the first part of the verse. But secondly, point B, a supernatural reaction, worship. Don't lose sight of that. Worship. We see here that Job bowed down in reverence to God. The phrase, the word that's used here is the idea of bowing down in reverence. So he not only, it didn't just like fall prostrate on the ground because he was overwhelmed, but he fell down in a sign of revering God. He was a man who feared God. And we see that he bows down and he worships. Verse 21, we see Job revealing the true feelings, the foundational truths of his feelings that he has in his heart. Verse 21. And he said, he has fallen to the ground in worship and said, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Job reveals his true feelings in his heart. First of all, we see that he realized what he had, including his children, were a gift from God. And God could do as he wishes. Justified in his action because he is the sovereign God. Don't ever forget that who you are and what you have, family and possessions, are because God has given them to you as his gifts to you. It's not by any good that we've done. It's not by our brilliance and our intelligence. Everything we have, everything we are is because of God. And we can never afford to forget that. And Job remembered that. And he says, I came naked out of my mother's womb, and when I leave, I'm going to leave naked from this world. So we see that Job understood the God thing and his sovereignty. Secondly, we see that he demonstrated a grateful heart to God for what he had had before God chose to take it away. He says, the Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Oh, God help you and me to have that frame of mind. Where if and when God chooses to take what he has given to us away, we can say, God, I still love you. I still want to serve you. I still want to be faithful to you. Even though what I'm dealing with right now is very, very hard. So we see that Job reveals the feelings of his heart. And in verse 22, Job's personal relationship with God was such that he did not accuse God nor feel that God had been unfair in what he had allowed. Because it says in verse 22, in all this Job sinned not, now notice, nor charged God foolishly. We hear God being charged foolishly all the time. Let's not let you and me be guilty of that, of charging God foolishly. Job clearly understood the meaning of what he said in verse 21 about himself. And secondly, Job clearly understood the meaning of what he had said in verse 21 about God. And third, Job truly believed that everything and everyone belongs to the sovereign God, and God can do with them as he chooses. This disaster did not destroy the relationship between Job and God. I know some of you are dealing with some very hard things going on in your life because of the COVID-19. But whatever happens, remember, God will take care of you. Don't let what's going on in your life destroy your relationship with your God, but let it draw you closer to God. You see, if we obey God only because he blesses us, the shallowness of our faith will show up in a time of testing. Matthew 7, therefore whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man which built his house upon a rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the wind blew and beat upon the house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. And every one that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not shall be likened to a foolish man which built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, the floods came, the wind blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. Faith that cannot pass cannot be trusted. Faith that cannot pass the testing cannot be trusted. James 1 says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations or diverse testings, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. And let patience have her perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, wanting or lacking nothing. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering, for he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. Let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. And then 1 Peter chapter 1. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, which according to his abundant mercy hath begotten us again to a lively or living hope by the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled that fadeth not away, reserved in heaven for you, who are kept by the power of God through faith unto salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time. Wherein you greatly rejoice, though now for a season, for a short period of time, if need be, you be in heaviness through the manifold tests, that the trial of your faith, being much more precious than of gold that perisheth, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ, whom having not seen ye love, though now you see him not, yet believing, you rejoice with joy unspeakable and full of glory, receiving the end of your faith, even the salvation of your souls. Life can happen, and it will happen, and it won't always be pretty. But one thing is sure, our eternity is settled. And that's what we look to. This life here is short. Eternity is forever. We look to the Lord, the author and the finisher of our faith. God help us during this time as we deal with what's going on in our lives and in the world. Lord, I pray you'd help us. Help us to be faithful to you. It's not easy at times dealing with life's events and life's circumstances. But we know that you are God and that you are in control. We know that you love us. We know that you would not do things to hurt us or destroy us. and any pain and suffering that you might see fit to put us through is done so that we will examine our own lives and our relationship with you, and we will draw closer to you and trust much less in our own ability and self. Help us, God. We are needy people. Without you, we can do nothing. But in your power and your strength, we can say, I came naked into the world, I'll leave naked from the world. The Lord gave, and the Lord has chosen to take away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Help us in whatever goes on in our life not to fall prey to sin or accuse you falsely. Guide us. Thank you for loving